Welcome to the latest edition of the all-new Seahawks podcast. Rob Staton, Robbie Williams with you again. We're going to preview the big game of the weekend, the Seahawks taking on the Dallas Cowboys. We're also going to look back on the win against the New England Patriots. We're going to talk about a number of different topics on this podcast, but let's start with the game last weekend. A very dramatic late win for the Seahawks, that goal line stop, sending them to 2-0. Robbie, it's been a few days since the game. Have you got any lasting impressions from that contest against Cam Newton and the Patriots?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I'd like to say just is a simple, when I went back and rewatched the game, I think maybe I was a little hard on Jaron Reed. He got double teamed quite a bit, which, originally I didn't see, in the game. So he was definitely being, two guys on him a lot. And the other thing is, man, if you would have went back and told me at the beginning of the year that LJ Collier and Lano Hill were going to get a huge stop at the end of the game against the Patriots, I would have kind of laughed. I'm like, sure. And I mean, I know it's still early in the season and there's a lot of question marks about the defensive line, but man, I love that LJ Collier is at least showing something, right? I mean, last year he wasn't showing anything. So at least this year they're getting some production instead of nothing, instead of it feeling like just a first round bust. So, and then again, you go back and you just watch Russell Wilson and he just looks dialed in. I don't really even know how to explain it. It just looks different. Every pass seems to be just on the money. And I'm really, really impressed with Russ. So that's kind of my lasting impression on it.
Yeah, I think that it was really interesting. I'm going to come on to some sort of advanced stats that I've been looking at today in a little while. But, I was interested I have watched little bits of the game back. The role of Jamal Adams was somewhat concerning to me. I just felt like watching him back that I think it's pretty well established that he gave up quite a few yards in coverage. I've not got the stat to hand, but we'll come back to that in a second. And I just wonder a little bit whether relying on him as a blitzer, and that's something else that I'm going to come on to in a bit, so much is having an adverse impact. We've seen the best of Jamal Adams against Atlanta, where I think they got the balance quite right, in the way that he attacked. I just wonder a little bit whether or not, especially with Bruce Irvin out now as well, whether or not they have to be very cautious of not trying to rely on him too much to do everything. He still needs to be able to play a bit like a safety every now and again. He can't always be attacking the line of scrimmage. You can't then have him sort of organising and doing stuff that a very experienced quality safety will do, and then be asking him to cover Julian Edelman as well. So it will be interesting to see. We've seen one great game against Atlanta, one game where he had a few issues. Let's see how he does in game 3 against Dallas. Right, I want to get on to these advanced stats, Robbie, and I want to ask you about this and what you make of this. Because I think it's very interesting. I think it's given us some insight into what the Seahawks are doing differently this year, to get around some of their personnel issues on the defensive line, which we've talked about an awful lot. And I had a look, and the Seahawks are blitzing 36% of the time, which is an incredible amount. More than a third of their defensive snaps they are blitzing. That is the 6th most in the league. It's actually more than Greg Williams and Todd Bowles, who we often refer to as the blitz specialist. Greg Williams refers to himself rather embarrassingly as Dr. Blitz, which is a bit of a clown's nickname. But the Seahawks are blitzing more than those two teams. Last year, they did increase their blitzing, but it was still only around 27%. They've gone up to 36% already this season. In 2018, they only blitzed 18% of the time. So you're talking about they've doubled their blitzing from 2018. That might be because of Jamal Adams. It's a particular strength of Adams to blitz. He's a fantastic blitzer. We're already seeing that. He's half a sack off the league lead for sacks after 2 games with his 2. But at the same time, it also perhaps is, again, a further indication of what is happening on that defensive line. And they feel, Robbie, in order to generate some pressure, they've got to be a bit more aggressive this year.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both, Jamal Adams and, having, just the defensive line that can't get the push. So, I mean, it's probably more of the latter, to be honest, just because, we've seen what they've got. They don't really have that speed edge rusher that they need. And, I don't know if they were relying on Bruce to be the speed guy, but, he's definitely a step slower and a little older. older, so I don't know if that was the case. And, now he's injured, so you're going to have to go with some youth. And for me, I'm actually pretty excited about that. I'm not trying to jump ahead or anything, but like, I'm pretty excited about seeing Alton Robinson, not only just because of the hype, but just because I want to give some guys that are younger an opportunity. Like, you're bringing out, 34-year-old rusher, and, you could go out and sign Clay Matthews and again, have another old rusher, but I would like to see some youth there and give these guys an opportunity to prove themselves instead of, just throwing in guys just because they've been around for a while.
On the topic of blitzing as well, Robbie, Seattle's pressure percentage, and people may well have seen this being reported, it's been on Twitter since the Patriots game. Their pressure percentage is not too bad. It's 22.3%. They've got 23 pressures so far in the first 2 games, which is actually amongst the NFL's top 10. It would be very easy to look at that and say that's a positive. That might be an indication that maybe the pass rush isn't quite as bad as it has been so far. But I think that there's something we've got to remember here, and this is something I wanted to bring to the table in this podcast. If you blitz 36% of the time, you will manufacture pressure. It's just a pure numbers game. If you have 5 offensive linemen and you have 7 guys rushing the passer, you've got a maths advantage there. That it's a numbers game. You are going to create some pressures. The key is when you are blitzing as much as the Seahawks is actually not pressure percentage, it's sack percentage. And Seattle's sack percentage is just 3%. The quality, the number of blitzes that they have, they're not getting home. And if they're going to continue to blitz at this rate, Robbie, we've got to see an increased number of sacks.
Oh, I agree with you. Like, you don't want to look at a stat like that at 3% and think, well, we're doing a good job. Like, you need to bring pressure at the right time and bring the right guys at the right time. And, I don't know if these stats come off of like a corner blitz or anything like that, or what kind of pressure we're bringing, but 36%. And that's a big jump from last year and the years previously. And I think it does say a lot about the defensive line. But I also think I think it's good that they're evolving. I mean, we were saying in the off season, like, Pete doesn't change. He doesn't, he's going to blitz 4. Maybe every once in a while they'll bring an actual blitz, but this is what we're going to play as a base defense. And now you're seeing a little bit of a change, and that's good. I mean, we're going to need that change because we need to see something happen on the defensive line and with our defense and the way that we are. The way our team is set up, this is probably going to be a realistic, number for us going forward.
Jamal Adams has blitzed 21 times so far. That is the 3rd most by any player in the whole league. The only 2 players who blitzed more than Jamal Adams are the Pittsburgh duo, TJ Watt and Bud Dupree. Now, they're rush linebackers. So you expect, I always find it a bit strange when those guys gets labeled as a blitz, because they're essentially they're linebackers, but their job is to actually get after the quarterback. I just wonder if this is linked. Again, what I was referring to, he's blitzing a lot. He leads the team in pressures as a consequence of blitzing a lot. He's also given the 8th highest, his yards per reception allowed is 20.8, which is the 8th highest in the league. His yards per target is 15.6. He's missed 3 tackles. He's conceded 187 yards. Again, I think it's great that they're adapting to a really cool player that they've acquired. I also think you have to still play within this scheme. This is a scheme that is well established. It's about people doing their job. I worry a little bit too much that the job they're asking Jamal Adams to do is maybe a bit too much. We can't rush with 4. Jamal, you're going to have to do this. But by the way, you still need to do the things that a safety in our scheme needs to do. So I think that's just something to monitor as we go along here. There's 2 other stats that I want to throw to you, Robbie, and then I promise we'll maybe move on to something a little bit more positive. But I do want to come back to the defensive line a little bit later on. When the Seahawks had the best defense in the NFL in 2013, it wasn't just 2013, but, I just want to pick that year because that's the year they were perhaps at the peak and won the Super Bowl. They gave up a league low 2,752 yards. That was 350 yards fewer than the team that ranked second. So they were way out in front in terms of the yards that they gave up in 2013. In 2 games, the 2020 Seahawks have given up 970 yards. That is a third of the entire total number of yards the 2013 Seahawks gave up. Now, nobody's suggesting for a second that this defense should compare to the LOB era peak years of Super Bowl championships. But I think it puts it into like the stark reality of what we've seen so far, Robbie, that a third of the 2013 defense's yardage has been given up in 2 games.
I mean, that's a real big telling stat. I didn't know that one until you just said it, Rob. So that's a big one. The only thing I can counter with it maybe just a little bit is just, changing offenses, the teams that we've played, things to be little bit different there, on how, the game is approached now a little bit different 7 years later. I mean, the offenses are, evolving as well. So, but yeah, I mean, it's a huge stat to say. I mean, but you think about the LOB in their prime, and man, I mean, how good were they? I mean, that's how good they were, right? I mean, I think people can sometimes take that for granted for how good those guys really were. So that's a telling stat, and for sure something that to look forward to and or to look at. I don't think we can compare this team to the LOB or to the 2013 or even 14 team. It's very, very different. And, that's why you're seeing a different, pass rush rate, because we can't generate the pressure with 4. So we have to bring the safety down to kind of help blitz, and he's really good at it. So, trying to play to their strength is what they're trying to do right now. And I want to take just one quick step back, because what you had said previously, about Jamal Adams giving up a lot of yards and such. And I think a lot of that has to do with you're blitzing him a lot. You're asking him to do a lot of things. He's probably going to get up a lot of yards. It's still early in the season. Remember, there wasn't a full off-season program. So you have to wonder about conditioning on some of these too. And, I don't know how many snaps he actually played, but I'm guessing it was over 90% of the snaps. So, it's a lot to play early in the season, and you're asking a lot of a guy right out the gate. You got to really be careful on that. You don't want him to pull a hammy or anything, or something crazy like that. So, and I mean, he's already dinged up with the finger and the elbow, so you got to be careful.
I'm gonna offer a silver lining to all of this in a second. So before anybody starts writing an angry letter to me or Robbie. I don't know why Robbie would be collateral damage in this. Quite frankly, it's me who's bringing the doom and gloom again. But one more stat, and then I'll come to the silver lining. And I think this is a scary one so far, and I think it's something that we need to be conscious of, especially this weekend against the Dallas Cowboys. So the Seahawks have allowed a league high 47 plays of 10 plus yards. So, it's different. Generally, I think a run of 10 yards is considered explosive. A 15-yard pass, I think it is considered an explosive play. But 10 plus yard plays, league high 47. The Seahawks have only defended 147 plays in total, which means that 31.9% of Seattle's defensive snaps have resulted in them giving up a play of 10 plus yards. I mean, that is a really concerning statistic. And when you look ahead to this game against the Cowboys, they lead the NFL with 41 offensive plays of 10 plus yards. So you've kind of got unfortunately for the Seahawks, you've got a defense that gives up a lot of these plays, playing an offense that has got the most in the league so far.
Yeah, and early on in the beginning of the season, after the Falcons game, I said, "Are we going to face a team that has a scarier offense than the Falcons?" I mean, like with the duo of Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley. But you start looking at the Cowboys, and they got it all. That CeeDee Lamb is he's a scary rookie. He's going to be pretty good, and Amari Cooper, and you start throwing some of these guys out there, and Ezekiel Elliott, and this is a really good football team, and they get big chunk yards for a reason, because they play. You have to play the pass and the run against these guys. So yeah, it's a scary stat to look at for sure. But I think as long as you just keep that bend but don't break mentality, you might give up those big chunk yards, just don't give up that 7. Once you get inside the 20, it's a different ball game. And once you get inside the 10, you got to make sure that you're stopping the run, stopping the pass, and there's no big chunk yard plays there. It's close. So that's where you need to hold them to 3 instead of 7.
A third of your defensive snaps can't go for 10 yards. It's really as simple as that. The Seahawks have to improve there. However they do it, whether it's going out and getting somebody, and that's what my silver lining is going to be, or whether it's just doing what they've got with the personnel that they have to find a way to lower that number in the coming weeks. Now, maybe it's just because Cam Newton was fantastic last week. Matt Ryan's always productive against the Seahawks, it seems. Maybe when they play a Kirk Cousins who's not had a great start. I don't want to tempt fate with that, because Kirk Cousins, I've flown 5,000 miles to watch Kirk Cousins beat the Seahawks in Seattle. So I'm well aware of what that is like. I don't want to tempt fate with anybody like Kirk Cousins, or when they play some of these other quarterbacks, hopefully that number, maybe it's just the fact they've played certain guys so far and those teams had to chase the game. Let's hope so. The Seahawks it's not sustainable to keep winning when you're giving up a third defensive place for 10 plus yards. Right, the silver lining, I promised it. It's gone on long enough. I need to give it. Right, Robbie, here's the thing. I've had a look. Now, nobody would say the 2018 Seahawks defense was a fantastic defense. In fact, at the end of the season, we were saying great defensive line draft, good opportunity to add to Frank Clark and Jaron Reed. But essentially, there were some pieces there to work with. And when you look at the numbers for 2018, so I mentioned their sack percentage this year is 3%. In 2018, it was 7.3%. So it's more than double what they're currently experiencing. They had the fourth highest pressure percentage, which is 28.5% in the league, despite the fifth lowest blitz percentage. The fifth lowest blitz percentage versus the sixth highest. That's what we've got this year. Great pressure percentage, despite the fact they're blitzing less. That, to me, shows that what the Seahawks don't really need right now is an army of pass rushers like the 49ers last year, or the current Washington football team array of first-round picks, 5 first-round picks, rushing the quarterback. What the Seahawks need is one guy. They need a guy who could do what Frank Clark did 2 years ago. So it's not, it's not the end of the world. If they could get somebody to do what Frank Clark did this year, they could get back to that. They could blitz less. They could increase their sack percentage. They could create a bit more pressure. And you've got the chemistry right there, the low blitzing, higher pressure percentage, higher sack percentage. If they can create that, there's absolutely no reason why this defense, look, I'm not saying it'd be top 10 with this. It could be 16th, though. And I think if you've got, per DVOA, the Seahawks currently number 2 on offense, number 1 on special teams, number 24 for defense. If that 24 could be 16, I think you could legitimately say the Seahawks have got a shot at a Super Bowl. So for me, and I don't know what you think, Robbie, I'm looking at, everyone's written off the next draft because you've already traded 2 picks, weird college football season, who knows what the draft's going to be like. I'm taking my 2021 second rounder and I'm going out there and seeing what I can get for that. And I think if you could get somebody who could come in, I'm not saying you're going to get Frank Clark. Of course you're not. Frank was a first and a second round pick. He's a great age. I'm not saying you're going to get somebody of that quality. But if you can get somebody who can just provide some pressure, 1v1, a defensive end, to help this defense elevate to the middle of the pack as opposed to the bottom third, I think your problems may well be solved.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't really see John Snyder packaging that second round pick. I mean, I agree with you that, who knows what it's going to look like. I think with already giving up the first and the third, I have a really hard time seeing John Snyder not having a pick in the first 3 rounds. But with that being said, a 4th round pick and Jacob Hollister or, Cody Barton or, package someone and a pick to a team that might need, linebacker help or, maybe needs a tight end. Those kind of things I think are more realistic. Also, I think, I see a lot of, Ryan Kerrigan's name being thrown out there and, what would the Redskins want for someone like him? And yeah, it's tough to say. We've seen Snyder pull off some crazy trades that for, not very much. But you're right. We need to go out and get somebody. This football team is not done. We're not complete on our 53-man roster or 56 now or whatever it is. We're not done. And this is where I think you're going to start seeing some of these young guys come in and hopefully either find out real fast can they play this game at an NFL level right now and make an impact on the game, or do we need to go out and get someone? And I think this is going to be a telling game. I keep saying it every week that I think this is going to be the week we're going to go get somebody else. But I think this will be a telling game to see, how does Alton Robinson play, when he actually gets a chance to play in an NFL game. I know with no preseason, it's hard to get that judge on people. So who knows, Rob? It's interesting to see how they'll approach this. But yeah, I don't think we're done. I have a hard time seeing the second round pick, but I wouldn't be against it by any means. If you go out and get a second round, if you use your second rounder and you go out and get someone who can impact the game and help us move up from 26 to 16 or whatever it might be, then yeah, I'm all in for it.
The way I look at it is Do you know what? Whenever the draft takes place next year, and who knows? Because, the 1 minute the college football season's not happening, then half of it's happening, then the Big Ten decide they're going to play again, and then the Pac-12 and now decide, and who knows in a month's time whether that will all change again. There's going to be football in February or whatever last year. Who knows whether it's April or whatever. But if you say to me, right, you've got two choices here. The Seahawks can either just plow on with this horror show of advanced stats that and that's just a flavor. Don't worry, there's more. If they can plow on with that and risk totally undermining what might be Russell Wilson's best season of his career. I mean, he's playing so well. This could be it. This could be the best of Russell Wilson we're witnessing right now. If I can take that pick and give the Seahawks the best possible chance to win the Super Bowl this year, or I can keep that pick and next April, we've just got something to get excited about on day 2 of the draft. I know which one I'm picking. And if the Seahawks are picking 32nd or overall in round 2, it's practically a 3rd round pick. It's not even a 2nd round pick. You're talking right at the end of round 2. I'm taking that pick. I'm ringing Ron Rivera, and I want to hear him say no for Ryan Kerrigan. This is a guy with, I think, 92 career sacks. For me, he's this year's Dwayne Brown. In 2017, they didn't have a left tackle. They'd lost George Fant to injury. Reese Odiambo was having a nightmare. They knew if we don't get a left tackle, this season is not going to happen. We are not going to get to the Super Bowl. They didn't get there, but so what? They got Dwayne Brown. They solved that need. He has been really solid for the Seahawks ever since. 2017, 18, 19, and now 20. He's one of the best trades that John Schneider has ever made. He's an older player, but he's what they needed because they weren't going to go and get a top 10 offensive tackle without, massive trade up in the draft. And then it's a crapshoot, isn't it? You don't know what you're going to get with the rookie. They knew what they were going to get with Big Dwayne. This, to me, is the solution now. You go and get an older player. You hope that you speak to Ryan. Give us 3 years. Give us 3 years for that 2nd round pick. I think he's 31 or 32. Help rush off the edge. He has 2 sacks already this season. So you know that he's producing. He's not at the downside. Ryan Kerrigan said in the offseason, I want to stay in Washington because I want the franchise record for sacks. He needed 2 to beat the record. He's got the 2. Go and get him. Washington need the 2nd round pick because they're rebuilding. They've got Chase Young and Montez Sweat. They've got 2 defensive tackles who are 1st round picks as well. Get Ryan Kerrigan over here to go for a ring. Really solid pro. If he wins a Super Bowl, he could be pushing for outside chance of the Hall of Fame with his 90-odd sacks. If he gets it up to 100 so, wins a ring in Seattle, he could be, an outside candidate. Not at first ballot or anything, but down the line. Really good, solid career. To me, it just makes sense, Robbie. And I would rather take that chance than just go along hoping that Benson Mayowa and LJ Collier and Rasheem Green are going to be enough. Because I think the evidence from what we've seen so far is that they're not. And as I've said, I think you just need one guy to really fix this issue.
Yeah, I mean, I'd trade our whole draft for a Super Bowl, Easy. That's an easy solution. I mean, easy answer for me. I mean, I'd trade every single pick we have to, for another Super Bowl ring. So yeah, if that's going to be the case and you feel like this is the guy, then yeah, go get him. The other thing you got to think about that's a little bit scary on as far as like the defensive end side of things is now the Niners are looking, right? I mean, they went out and signed Ziggy Ansah, right? They just promoted Deion Jordan off the practice squad. They're out there hunting for DNs as well. So, you've got someone within your division who has the same need as you, who has a little more draft capital than you. So maybe you have to package a second to go up there and get it.
If the San Francisco 49ers trade for Ryan Kerrigan, you are going to hear me shouting all the way from England. Be ready, Seattle. You will hear it. Right, let's move on. Let's talk about well, I'll tell you what, we'll talk about Dallas in a moment. Let's first, Bruce Irvin's out now. How are this, Alton Robinson, Pete Carroll's already confirmed that Alton Robinson is going to essentially step into his shoes. He made that comment on Monday. He will speak again today and may give an update on that. But the Seahawks are banking on him for 6 to 8 sacks. Carroll said, over and over again, we need him and Mayowa to reproduce their sack production from 2019. That's not going to happen now. This is going to be a big challenge for Alton Robinson. They, because Darrell Taylor looks like he's not going to play this year, Robbie, or he's certainly not close to being back. All of a sudden, Alton Robinson needs to get out there. And listen, people could say, how much can he do? Because he's been inactive and the Seahawks aren't exactly great in the pass rush. So how good it really is he? But the Seahawks have held back players who should have been played earlier. They held back Michael Bennett in 2013 and didn't use him as much as they should have done. And Carroll admitted after the Super Bowl that was a mistake. They held back Richard Sherman in 2011 and they held back Frank Clark for 2 years. So it could be that he's just roaring and waiting for his opportunity. But he's got to get it now. I mean, I think we've seen enough of DeMontre Moore and people like that. Let's see Alton Robinson have a shot at this, especially if Tyron Smith is going to be out, which he may well be in this game for Dallas.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I've been clamoring for a while. I'm really excited to see what he can do. And not only that, the Seahawks all about Cam Chancellor, too. His first year, he didn't really play very much. So, yeah, I'm really excited to see, like, give these young guys a shot because, like you said, Richard Sherman came in when Marcus Trufant went down and then stepped right in and never looked back, and you look at these players and you got to give them an opportunity to prove themselves. And with no preseason this year, and not getting a chance to at least prove in game what they can do. And, all the hype surrounding this guy, let's give him a shot. I mean, we what else are we going to lose right now? We're not going to go out. If we're not going to go out and get somebody else, you got to give these young guys a shot to prove themselves. And I'm really excited to see it happen. And, this is going to be a good test. You're going to go right out and place a really good offense and, pretty good offensive line as well. So let's see what he can do.
And people have wondered, why haven't they signed, Clay Matthews, for example, Cam Wake, Michael Bennett's name came up just very quickly on those three. Clay Matthews, when he was cut by the Rams, there was a clause in his contract which means that he receives money this year if he isn't signed anywhere else. I think it's a couple of $1 million or something like that. So he gets that just for sitting at home and conditioning his hair. So to actually come out and play for a team, someone's going to have to make it worth his while. And that was the thing with Denver. Denver made an approach to him. They said he didn't want to play. He then released a statement to his agent saying, look, no one's made an offer worth it yet. So I think he's open to coming back, but he probably wants a kind of salary like Everson Griffin's getting. He's not going to come and play on the veteran minimum because it's just not worth it. It's going to cost him money. So that's probably the issue there. Cam Wake, I didn't realize that he's 39 in January. I mean, I said he's probably my age. I did myself a disservice there. Because he's nearly 40. So, that is pretty old for a pass rusher. Maybe he's still got it. I know his stats were good last year. But again, it's probably going to take a decent salary for him to get off the couch and come and play football again. Michael Bennett, I don't know, Robbie, just a big note. People have got to remember in 2018, when they traded him to the Eagles, it cost the Seahawks, I think, his full salary. I mean, they essentially paid him to play for the Eagles in 2018. If that doesn't tell you how they felt about him, look, great player, a player that will always be remembered fondly. I'll never forget him driving around on that bicycle after the Packers game in the NFC Championship. But the Seahawks moved on at great cost. And this isn't Marshawn Lynch making a return or Bruce. This is a very different situation. I think they'd had their fill of Michael Bennett when he left, and there's no way back. And he's retired anyway.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing about the Michael Bennett thing is he did say that he wanted to finish his career in Seattle or, something like that. I can't remember exactly what he did say, but, what it would take for a Michael Bennett to come back and play is he would probably need to ring up Pete Carroll and be like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I did what I did or whatever, being. And
I'm going to shut up if I come back.
Yeah, right. I'll keep my mouth closed, but, he's a prideful guy. Do you think he's really going to do that? I mean, I don't. And I don't see Michael Bennett coming back. I mean, it would be a far-fetched snenario. I mean, I read someone had said bringing Earl back too. I mean, like, come on. Like, what are you talking about? Like, how do you think that's ever going to happen? Bringing Earl back from there, all of a sudden, well, we're thin at safety and he's out there and he's like, you think we want Earl to play for us anymore? Like, no. I mean, he shot that ship when he flip Pete Carroll off. That ship has sailed. Like, it's over. Like, there's no building that relationship. And, maybe he comes back and signs a one-day contract to retire as a Seahawk, but that's about it as far as I can see that actually happening. So, these names, people are living in the past and wanting players that, that were once in their prime. And, honestly, Bennett would probably benefit us a little bit. I mean, at least a rotational guy, but I mean, you think about it in terms of, personality and history, it just doesn't make any sense. I don't know why people keep bringing that one up, and I just don't see it realistically happen. I would rather see guys like Alton Robinson and giving some of these young guys a shot to go out there and prove themselves.
I think Bennett's got a place in Hawaii, hasn't he? He's probably on the beach right now sipping a tequila. I mean, I don't know if he likes tequila. I don't know if he even drinks. I don't know. But I've just got this mental image of him over there having a whale of a time. As for Earl, what's he going to do? Is he going to come back for like $1 million to be the backup safety? You know, because you're not going to bench Quandre Diggs and put Earl in there and say to Diggs, well, you're now the Marquise Blair of the team. I mean, that's just not going to happen. So it's my word. You're right. But I tell you what, get ready, Robbie, because Richard Sherman's a free agent at the end of the season. I guarantee if he doesn't sign an extension in San Francisco, somebody is going to say, get him back. And do you know what? Maybe that one I could see Richard having a moment with Pete and saying, I think Pete and Sherm have a relationship. Well, I think Pete's sad that it ended the way it did. And I suspect that I could imagine Sherm being intelligent enough to turn around and go, I'm sorry. Like, I could imagine him actually doing that. I could. Maybe I'm completely wrong. I just could imagine that. And maybe the Seahawks will need a cornerback in the offseason. I don't know. With Dunbar's out of contract, Griffin's out of contract. That's a story for another podcast. Right, let's talk about...
But you also look at like Sherman too. Like, I mean, it seemed like last year him and Russ put whatever they had issues behind them, and they swapped jerseys, and the whole "I love you, bro" kind of thing. So that's
they worked out together in the off season.
Yeah. I mean, that's more of a realistic scenario, but we'll probably tackle that this off season.
Yeah, I think Sherman's got a real connection here still. I think he wanted to go to San Francisco and prove a point, but I think that maybe people sometimes realize that revenge is not all it's cracked up to be, and sometimes the grass isn't always greener. I don't know. Right, let's talk about the Dallas Cowboys. I mentioned earlier, Robbie, that I once flew 5,000 miles to watch Kirk Cousins beat the Seahawks in Seattle. I also flew 5,000 miles to watch Tony Romo and the Cowboys beat the Seahawks in Seattle once. So I could do with, I always enjoy beating Dallas. I think this will be a very difficult game, regardless of how crappy Dallas have looked for the most part in their two games. I thought against the Rams, they looked slow and outdated and basic against the Rams. It was as if the Rams were just playing on a different level. And then for the Falcons, they were just a hot mess. And then it's simply the generosity of the Falcons to throw that game down the toilet right at the end with Julio Jones dropping a pass that he could catch in his sleep, and the onside kick, and the hot knife through butter defense and missed opportunities for Atlanta. I mean, Dallas should be coming to Seattle trying to save their season at 0-2. They come here at 1-1, and it's like the whole complexion of the game's changed. Yes, Dak is a very good quarterback. Zeke is going to be a test. People have been praising the Seahawks run defense. They haven't really had much to do. They're going to be tested on Sunday by Zeke. And then you've got this assortment of weapons that Dallas have. On offense, they are going to be a pain in the arse for the Seahawks to defend this weekend. However, on defense, they're the same teams. I Googled Dallas. I Googled the term Dallas Cowboys earlier today. The first thing that popped up in the Google search was an article titled Dallas Cowboys, lack of pass rush means lack of success. I mean, it seems that they've got the same issues. So I don't know what the over-under is for total points in this game, but I think it's going to be a high-scoring contest. And if it does come down to Russell versus Dak, regardless of Dallas's weapons, I still would favor Russ in a shootout.
Well, it's interesting that you bring up the defensive line on for Dallas, because if they have the same issues that we have, they signed Everson Griffin, and we wanted Everson Griffin. And if they're having issues getting a pass rush, that kind of tells you something maybe a little bit about Everson Griffin. Although if you looking at his stats right here, I mean, he had 5 tackles, 2 solo, a sack, and 2 tackles for loss last game. So I mean, I take that. I take that all day.
I think he's the lone wolf at the moment, Everson Griffin.
Right. Well, if you look at week 1 though, Alden Smith, man, he led the team in tackles. He had a sack. He looked like he was back. And week 2 he had 2 solo tackles as well, and 5 regular. So it'll be interesting. This is going to be a really high scoring game. I feel like the Seahawks are going to score points on them. I mean, Alden Smith is like 4 years removed from actually playing a football game, but he has looked really good in the last 2 games, in my opinion. They do have Everson Griffin. I don't know what their rotation is like, but when you look at their safeties, in their corners. They've got some pretty good talent there. I don't know where they're struggling at, but you're right. It's a very basic. They should be coming in 0-2 right now. I mean, Atlanta gift wrapped that game for him, gave it to her as a present. Like, here's a win for you. And this is going to be a high scoring. I mean, we're going to run into the same thing, but in my opinion, I'll take Russ all day over this. I think this is where he's going to come in and really put a stamp on that MVP.
I think Dallas's media I think Dallas in general, they're quite tough on their star players. I think we saw that with Tony Romo. I think one of the main issues is DeMarcus Lawrence has been hurt. He didn't play much against Atlanta. People have been wondering what the heck's going on there. They're paying him an absolute king's ransom. And I think part of the question mark about the pass rush is, where is DeMarcus Lawrence? Because once you pay a guy $20 million a year, you're expecting 15 sacks a season. So I think that's part of the criticism there. Dallas is Chidobe Awuzie's out of this game. That's another player that's going to be missing. As I mentioned, their left tackle, Tyrone Smith, he was held out against Atlanta. And there's a doubt as to whether he's going to come back. They held him out of Atlanta to get him back for Seattle. But it's one of them. Is he going to play? If he does play, what level is he going to be at? Essentially going to be he's starting the season this weekend. So that's not encouraging for Dallas. For this game, it just seems to me like what is the value of momentum? It's one of those stupid topics that the Seahawks Twitter just wraps itself up in. It's like, no, momentum doesn't exist and stuff like that. But if you speak to anybody within any kind of sport, they'll all tell you that momentum is a factor. Now, the Dallas Cowboys had an emotional win, miraculous win. They needed something to kickstart their season, and Atlanta gave it to them. They should be coming to Seattle with a tail between their legs, thinking, if we don't win here, we're 0-3. The season's you're starting to think, how many playoff teams make it at 0-3, even if you do play in the NFC least? So, I just wonder whether or not that will give them a spark. At the same time, Robbie, my feeling is that it will be a shootout. I've got an overtime vibe. I just get a feeling that I could imagine maybe the Cowboys with a late drive to take it to overtime. And then however it plays out, maybe a bit of to and fro, like the San Francisco game on the road last year, and Russell maybe finding a play somewhere, or somebody making a big play of some description in order for the Seahawks to nick this one. So I'm thinking sort of a 30-27 type thing, maybe 37-34, in that kind of range in favor of the Seahawks. But I have to say, I'm not confident, because I just feel like they're going to drop a game that they should win at some point. And I classify this as a game they should win if they want to be Super Bowl. I think that Baltimore would win this game. I think that Kansas City would win this game at home. The Seahawks want to be considered in that company. They have to win this game at home. But I worry that they will drop a game they have no business losing, because of stuff like we saw against New England, where the defense is just a sieve.
Yeah, I could see it playing out that way. I could also see it playing out kind of like the Falcons game. I think really the key is going to come down to stopping Zeke. If we can hold them to under 100 yards and, force them to actually have to throw the football, and we get out to an early lead, I could see this being a game a lot like the Atlanta game was, where we have, the game's not out of hand, but it's, you feel a little bit more comfortable with, an 11-point lead or whatever the case might be, a 2-score lead. I could see that be kind of the case. And I really feel like, it is going to be a shootout for me. I'm looking high. I'm thinking, 42 to 38 or something like that. But I just think Russ is too good right now. And in my opinion, this is going to be like Russ is going to say, like, you don't want to give me an MVP now. Like, this is where he's going to, I think, another 4 or 5 touchdown passes, and I think this is going to be a really good game for him. I think he's got a good opportunity to show that. And if we can just hold him to 3 instead of 7, I think this is the game that we should walk away with. I don't expect it to be comfortable. I do expect it to be fairly close, but I could see it being more like the Atlanta game than the New England game. What you don't want is Dallas having the football at the end of the game like the Patriots did, coming down to score the football, to score the game. You don't want that scenario. I think this time we'll lock it down.
That is a great point. And I hope the Seahawks learned from the final drive. I hope that was a moment where Pete Carroll went away and said, right, okay, I know what I'm going to do next time if this comes along. If it's 3rd and 1, and the idea is not, just to finish on this, if they'd run the ball there on 3rd and 1, let's say, and not made it, I would have gone for it again, because then New England would have had the ball, in your territory. but they've got a short field to work with. Therefore, if they use their timeout, you can kind of save time a little bit, because if they score, you're going to get the ball back. So you've got a chance then to finish the game on offense with Russell Wilson. You're still giving your defense a chance to go and make a play. But if you get 1 yard, you've got 2 plays to get 1 yard. You win the game. So you don't even give them the ball back. So I think that the percentages there was to just try and avoid Cam getting the ball back at the end and just try and win the game. And if he gets the ball back, you may well get another chance to go and win the game again if your defense doesn't make a play. I mean, the defense could have held them, and it could have made a 4th down play or whatever. They needed a touchdown, not a field goal. So they should have played with the confidence there. Look, we're going to go for this. If we don't get it, they need a touchdown. If they get a touchdown, the chances are there may well be 45 seconds, a minute left for us to go and get a field goal to win the game. It doesn't matter. So I hope that they have learned from that. And yes, if there is a chance to keep the ball out of Dak's hands so that he does not have a chance to go and win this game at the end, please take it, because you want Russell Wilson and your offense and your strengths to win you this game. You don't want to be relying on the defense. Fair play to them. They made a massive play at the end. Pete Carroll, as much as the Seahawks deserve criticism for their offseason, he deserves a lot of praise. Everyone saw it. Grabbing Bobby Wagner after the timeout. They're going to do this. You need to do this. Wagner goes in. They execute. They win the game. Maybe New England went to the well too often with that play, but at the same time, the Seahawks made the play when they needed to. They won the game. It's 2-0. Let's see if they can go to 3-0 this weekend against the Dallas Cowboys. Right, for more analysis on this game and everything else, SeahawksDraftBlog.com. Let us know in the comments section on YouTube or on the blog how you think this game is going to go. Give us a prediction. What are the keys to beating Dallas? I've suggested they should go and trade for Ryan Kerrigan. I think we'd all love some suggestions on who could be alternatives there, because I'm really struggling to think of any. But if there's one that you've had in mind that you think could really work, let us know about that as well. Please like the video. Please share it. Please spread the word about this podcast and help us gain a following here on YouTube. People are asking about whether it's going to go on Apple. I will certainly do that. If the numbers keep increasing, we'll put it on Apple for you as well. Right, we'll see you after the game against Dallas. We'll do an instant reaction podcast there. Good luck to the Seahawks. We'll speak to you on Sunday.